Hey, everybody. Happy Easter season. I had a chance to meet you. My name's Joe, pastor here. Happy to spend some time with you. We're kicking off a new series today called Becoming Us, an invitation to a Christian community. And the message I want to give today is probably one of the more important ones I've given. It's very personal, and it kind of is probably one of the best explanations for who we are as a community. So, if someone was like, "Hey, what sermon should I listen to understand who we are?" This is probably a sermon like this is the one I'd recommend. So I'm excited to be here. Before we get into that, I do want to just spend a few moments to center ourselves, to sit, and to embrace the silence, and to just spend a few moments for the Spirit of God to meet us in this space. So let us pray in silence together. On behalf of all of us who live loud and chaotic lives, for those who struggle to slow down, God, we give you thanks for moments like these. In your Son's name, Jesus, we pray. Amen. When I was in college, I used to I'd write poetry, and I would go open mic nights at my university, and I would read these poems. And if you know me well enough, you know that probably they were comedy-based poetry. I don't know if you know that's a thing, but it's a thing, and I did it. And I would go, and so it had been years since I had written poetry or done open mic nights where I read poetry. And my wife and I were in the process of moving to Columbus. We at the time lived in Athens, Ohio, and we were coming to Columbus to plant a church. That church eventually became City View when we merged with St. Luke's. But we were charged with meeting as many people as possible. So one day during that church plant season, I searched for open mic nights for poetry. I was like, oh, this is a great way to get out of my comfort zone, meet some people. And so the timing worked out. It happened to be in Columbus that day, and so I go to this open mic night on campus. I arrived as the sun was setting. I was early. I parked my car on campus, which is in and of itself pretty stressful. And I got there early, and I got there so early, in fact, that I had enough time to really second-guess the whole idea. Anyone done that? You probably, a few of you might have pulled into church a little early. I'm like, I'm not sure I want to go in. But I started to convince myself, and so I left my parking spot. I was like, I started driving around. I was like, I'm going to leave, and then I found myself going in circles, telling myself, I'm going to leave, I'm going to stay, I'm going to leave, I'm going to stay. So, but eventually, I work up the courage. I'm going to go into this really just classic university, dingy, poorly lit, smells bad bar. Maybe some of you are familiar with bars like this. I never attended there. I was not a resident of Columbus yet. We hadn't moved here yet. I was visiting from out of town. We were planning to move here. And I was feeling very insecure. I was very terrified. And, this kind of surprised me a little bit because I was never nervous sharing my poems at other open mic nights. And so what was different about this? I was kind of like thinking about it. But I go in. I remember my breath was short. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. When you kind of like have an out-of-body experience where like, I'm not sure I belong here. And you're just like, but I'm doing it anyways. And so this small town Christian boy walked into a bar. It was not a joke. And I don't know if you've ever been in a place where you just really feel like you don't belong. Or for some of you, that was a church you attended. But it's disorienting. You can feel off. You can almost feel like you're not there. So I find a seat. I'm in this bar. I find a seat. No one talks to me. I wasn't even sure I was in the right place. I wasn't sure when it would start. The communication on what to expect was not there. Was I supposed to sign in? What I realized is that every gathering has its own liturgy, which is what we call the order of service, or like what to expect. And they didn't have it. Their liturgy. I didn't know what was going to happen. And so, do I have to pay, or was only those who were going to read poems that were supposed to pay? Because I did see someone exchange money, but now I don't know what they were buying. To be honest with you, I don't know if it had anything to do with poetry or if it had everything to do with poetry. And I didn't know where the restrooms were, and I had to go, and I thought maybe if I got a drink, then I wouldn't feel so out of place. Maybe I'd get the drink after I find the restroom, and would it be less weird if I ordered a drink, or more weird? And how do I sign up if I actually want to read this poem that I literally just wrote in my car so that I'd have a reason to come in and meet new people? And eventually, my panic got interrupted by people sharing their poems. And they were all equally anxious and dark poems, like any good poetry read in a dingy bar on campus, about heartbreak and brokenness and gender identity and sexual orientation and abuse and church abuse, using vulgar language, and just burying their souls. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful. But I did wonder if I belonged. I remember thinking to myself, boy, I hope no one asks me what I do for a living. Especially after a few people shared about their religious experiences, the religious trauma that showed up in their poems, overtly and more subtly. And then, after the first round of people sharing poems, someone finally talked to me. And they walked up to me, didn't introduce themselves, and said, hey, do you want to be one of our judges for the next round? And I was like, I guess there's a second round coming, and I guess it's a competition. I don't really know what's going on, but I tell them, like, no thanks. I have to actually leave early. I have to be somewhere. I did not have to be anywhere. And I left. And so for everyone who's visiting today and sneaks out as soon as the service is over, I know. I've been there. And I never felt more like an outsider, and it humbled me because I navigate mostly spaces where I feel like I'm comfortable. I grew up in church, for example. I navigate a lot of churches, and it doesn't matter how diverse the church is, whether it's extremely traditional, charismatic. I've experienced it all from a very young age, and I'm cool with it. I'm comfortable. I'm familiar. My dad was a pastor. My wife's a pastor. My mom would have been a pastor if she believed that was a thing women were allowed to do. And I'm very familiar with that space. But here I found myself in a space I wasn't familiar with. I didn't understand the liturgy, the rhythms. I wasn't sure whether I belonged, and I wasn't. And it took being in a space that I didn't feel like I belonged to make me realize what it felt like to be an outsider. Have you ever walked into a church where you felt like you could just never earn the right to be there? Boy, maybe everything feels foreign, even if there was something beautiful. Like maybe there's something beautiful about it, but I don't know. I don't understand what's going on. Maybe the people were so different from you that you worried that if the people figured out who you really were, they'd never like you. And that fear of never belonging keeps you in your car, or you get back to your car as quickly as possible, don't want to talk to anyone. The only time that someone does talk to you is when they need volunteers. Hey, you want to serve as a judge? Have you ever wanted to belong, especially in a church, and just never felt like you could? I'm really grateful for this experience on campus because it gave me a little bit of a taste of what that feels like. Belonging is a tricky thing. According to Kendra Cherry, a psychosocial rehabilitation specialist and author of Everything Psychology book, writes this. It defines belonging as this: the sense of belongingness, also known as the need to belong, refers to a human emotional need to affiliate with and be accepted by members of a group. This is a basic definition that I think is worthy of spending some time with. We see here the idea that in belonging, we're not only accepted by a group, but that group is willing to be associated with us. That's what belonging is ultimately about. It means you're more than just a visitor or you're a regular attender. Belonging means that when you're with a group of people like a church or a club or a poetry open mic night or a neighborhood, whatever group of people you want, they look at someone like you and they say, those people, those are my people. They're one of us. Not only do I accept them, but I'm willing to associate with them. That's what belonging means. And so I asked again, have you ever struggled with feeling like you don't belong at church? If you have, let me tell you the secret to feeling like you belong at church. And by secret, I mean the unhealthy, ironic, sarcastic way in which you can easily belong in any organization, especially churches. And it's pretty easy. I grew up, so this is my own experience of church. I don't know if this is your experience, but here it is. It usually wasn't written down, but the rules were there, okay? And it might not always be followed, but it typically followed this particular pattern more often than not. And this is how it looked. The first step to belonging was you had to behave a certain way. And there were all sorts of rules you had to follow. Most of them were not written down, were unspoken, and you would find out you broke them by breaking them and someone telling you. And they could be serious rules, and they could be, the rules could be as silly as what you're expected to wear. You could show up to a space, you're like, whoop, I didn't know we were wearing suits in this particular gathering. Or whether you're allowed to drink alcohol, or how you're allowed to date or not date, what words you're allowed to say, and to who, what baptism means, whether it means one thing or another, whether the rules are in the community you're trying to belong to, figure them out, and you follow them if you want to belong in most places. You have to behave the right way in front of the right group of people, and there's a good chance they'll let you belong. So number one, behave the right way. Number two, believe the right things. So you thought all you had to do is behave. You want to really belong? You better get your theology in order. You better believe the right things. Churches focus on teaching people what it means to be a Christian, and sometimes it is a very specific type of Christian. The Calvinists, growing up, the Calvinists always wanted me to be more Calvinist. It was my destiny. And the Reformed people always wanted me to be more Reformed, and the Methodists always wanted me and still want me to be more Methodist. And I'm an ordained United Methodist elder, and I'm still not Methodist enough for some people. And the missionary church always wanted me to be more missional, and the Wesleyans wanted me to be more Wesleyan. And when you're with one group, you can't believe like the others, or you won't belong. It doesn't matter what you actually believe, by the way, as long as you're willing to put your name on the dotted line after the creed. You don't have to actually believe, you just have to pretend. And you, too, can belong. And this is how it worked. Behave, believe, and if you do those well enough, or you convince the right people that you've done it well enough, you can belong. This is my experience of Christianity growing up. And I know it was the experience of some of you as well. But is this the only way? We have this disposition to exclusion. I used to work as a youth pastor before I was a pastor, and I used to work with youth, and specifically at-risk youth. Worked for a ministry that engaged in a lot of youth detention centers, and I do school assemblies and things like this in underserved populations. And I used to do this exercise, and it's such a stupid exercise. I don't recommend it, but it really made my point strong. And very simple exercise. I would grab a couple of the biggest guys in the room. So I'd grab some guys, like the football players or whatever in the room, and I'd have them come up, and I'd tell them to stand in a circle facing each other. So they'd all stand in a circle facing each other. And then I'd grab one of the scrawny kids in the room, and I'd bring him up. I'd say, here's what I want you to do. And I would talk to the scrawny kid. He's standing over here, and you get this circle of footballs. They're all shoulder to shoulder. I'd tell the scrawny kids, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to do whatever you can to get inside that group. guess what happened every time? The football players would all lock arms, and the scrawny kid would like jump on them and try to, and it was like a whole thing. And I let that go on for like a minute or two. And then this is like such a like shame-based illustration. So I'm not recommending it, but it serves the point. And then I would get their attention, and I would say, okay, friends, all I said was I want you to try to get into that circle. I never told you to keep him out. You know, and you might see their face drop or their eyes light up. But it's something about being told to try and get into a circle naturally makes everyone think that they should keep them out, even though we weren't told to. This is what we do as humans. It's as basic and as primal as the tribes that litter our evolutionary past. Most organizations, by default, do this without exception. Neighborhoods, by default, do this. Businesses, by default, do this. If you are a part of a community, whatever community you identify with, by default, the natural evolutionary motivation is to keep people out. By default. And the church is no exception. I would argue that unless we actively push against this notion, it is the default of most communities. Clergy make other clergy jump through hoops so they can belong to their ordination clubs. Professors make other professors fight for tenure. Fraternities have their initiation rituals. Conversations with friends tend to default to those who are most like us, and all others get left out of the conversation. Exclusion is our human default, even if we hate to admit it. It's what makes us human. If it's something we're trying to get into, we can't help but ask the question, should we let them? And what do they need to do before we let them? What are the rules? What do they need to do first? Are they believing the right thing? Are they behaving the right way? We're not going to let anyone in, right? It'll all fall apart if we just let anyone in. This is the default human position. And I would argue that it is the primary issue that Jesus pushed against. And why Jesus' message continues to be so revolutionary, because it pushes against this very natural tendency. Look at this passage from Matthew 18. I love this. Matthew 18, 12 through 14 says, what do you think if a man owns 100 sheep and one of them wanders away? This is Jesus teaching. Will he not leave the 99 on the hills and go look for the one that wandered off? And if he finds it, truly I tell you, he is happier about that one sheep than about the 99 that did not wander off. In the same way, your Father in heaven is not willing that any of these little ones should perish. What I love about this parable is it's not about gathering the 99 to form a committee, to craft the rules, to decide who gets to stay. You see churches do it all the time. They're like, there's that one person that's like, got cut off from the church, is experiencing trauma, and the church is like, well, all right, we got to decide whether they're allowed back in. And the person's like, I don't even want to be there. You're wasting I work with so many churches, and they spend so much energy trying to decide who gets to be a part of their community. And I'm like, the people that you're cutting off don't even want to be there. You got to completely flip the way you think about this. The 99 aren't busy making lists of behaviors to enforce or creeds to demand, determining who deserves care. The good shepherd doesn't spend his time with the sheep, locked arms, guarding the field and deciding who to let in and keep out, or using phrases like love the sinner, hate the sin. In the parable, the shepherd isn't concerned with who to let in. That's not the question the shepherd is focused on. He's focused on something much more important, and it's this question: who is missing? And the same should be for us. In every conversation, in every decision, in every community we're a part of, who's missing? Who might not feel like they belong? We have to look around and ask ourselves, who's missing? Where do they go? Where should we be going to find them? And when we find them, do they think they'll let us carry them back? And what does it mean to love people who aren't even a part of our community yet? And how can we find more people to love this way? These are the questions we have to be asking. Psychologists suggest that belonging or feeling this being accepted and affiliated with a group of people is one of the most basic human needs. Finding a place to belong where there are people who are okay saying, hey, you're part of us, or I'll attach my name to you, is one of the most basic human needs. And religious people struggle with this. They are very careful to not attach their names to particular groups of people out of fear that it will make them look less religious. So much so that, and once again, Jesus pushed against this. So how did Jesus' example change Jesus' reputation? What was he known for? He was known for being a friend of outcasts, sinners, tax collectors, prostitutes. He lived into this principle so profoundly that he gained a negative reputation with those who got to say his reputation was so bad that he was crucified for it. Do you understand? Like, he leaned into this so much. It's like, I will put my name on people who other people say don't deserve to have my name. I'll associate with them. I'll put my... Yeah. But this sense of belonging, because he does this because the sense of belonging is such a basic need. It's right up there with the need for shelter, food, and water, which means those who go without their basic needs suffer in real ways. If you don't have enough food, you don't have enough water, you will suffer. If you don't have belonging, you will suffer. And we live in a deeply disconnected world where there is a real hurt for belonging. Psychologists have found that those who lack belonging often are associated with poor health, depression, suicide, even criminal acts. Living without belonging can actually make us really desperate and hungry in ways that we don't often recognize. And I think this is reflected in Jesus' teaching as well. One time, Jesus told a story about sheep. It was a different story. This one involved goats as well. And the shepherd in the story had the job of separating the sheep from the goats. Because one of them was going to go on to the slaughter and die, and the other was going to go to the pasture and live. And it's a picture of having life on one side and death on the other side. I don't know. You guys are on the death side. So you got to separate somehow, you know. You can get up and move if you need to. It's life on one side, death on the other, or life on one side, death on the other. It's a picture of these two extremes as a way of painting a picture of the kind of community that God is ushering in. Would we be a community that leads to life or to death? That's a question we have to ask. Will our church be a community that leads to life or to death? Will our neighborhoods be a community? Where our cities, will we be a part of a community that leads to life or to death? And in this story, there's a very simple line used to separate these two realities. And it's very logical. It's very obvious. It's not complicated. And it's simply this. Are you willing to address other people's basic needs, or are you not? That's it. And those who make sure everyone has enough water and food and shelter will obviously build a community shaped by life. Because guess what? People will live if they have water and food and shelter. Like, this is not rocket science. You build a community that provides these for everybody, and more people are going to live. On the other hand, if you build a community where these are kept from people, and you don't make sure that everyone has what they need, then clearly you're building a community shaped by death, which is what most of our communities look like. It's just true. People die from violence, from starvation, from lack of shelter, every day in Columbus, and even more so in other parts of the world. So if we invest in each other's basic needs, we're building the community that God wants in this world. Very simple. So take this into account. Let's look at this passage. What are the basic needs that Jesus is addressing in this passage? He says this, "For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me." Food and water are, very obvious right at the top. Can't live without them. Shelter and clothing are also very basic needs, right? We provide shelter and clothing to everyone. But look at what else is included. He says, "I was sick and you looked after me." not healed me, just shared space with me while I was sick and I was in prison and you came to visit me. This is belonging. They were cared for and associated with even when they were hurting or cut off. Even when they were locked up, they weren't forsaken. The community of God was still willing to be associated with them. And that's what it means to belong. And Jesus' story of sheep and goats suggests that it's essential as food and water. So let me ask you this question. Who are you willing to give food and water to? What do they have to do first? So it comes to your house, someone comes to your house, they are on the brink of death, starvation, thirst. What would you require of them before giving them a glass of water? Would you walk through the Nicene Creed? Make sure that they're on board with it? Would you do a survey of their life choices up to that point and really, help them understand how all of their decisions brought them to this place before giving them water, right? Or would you just give them water? Don't gloss over this. Sit with this. Because however you answer that question, the same should be applied with the people you're willing to associate with. If you're willing to take care of their essential needs, like food and water, without a whole application beforehand, then remember this, that belonging is also an essential need. And it's more complicated than this, and I know that, and we don't have time to get into it, and we still have to have healthy boundaries, and all of the footnotes that you feel needed to be added to this, let's add them, okay? But let's not lose the point. Who is allowed to find belonging at City View? Very simple. Anyone who needs it and wants it. Period. We've often seen churches start with behave and then believe, and if you do that, you can belong. But at City View, it has always been meant to be the other way around. Belong first, without limitation. And in the context of belonging, we'll talk about what we believe. You might not believe what our church officially believes. I might not believe what our church officially believes. You might not believe what I believe. We'll have that conversation from the safety of belonging, and we'll figure it out, and it won't threaten your belonging. There are things that we officially believe, and there are things that I officially believe, and I'm not going to teach you anything different, but I'm not also, we're in community together. We'll figure it out. And behavior is still important. We're not going to allow people to do whatever they want, especially when it causes people harm. These things are important. How we behave, what we believe, these things are important. Next week, we're going to talk about what we believe, what belief looks like. The week after that, we're going to talk about what it means to behave. Yeah, we're going to talk about how to behave, people. But first is belonging. Community isn't something you should have to earn a right to. It's too essential. Community isn't something it's something that's given. It's something that you receive. Community is grace. Amen. Unmerited. You don't deserve it. You can't earn it. It's yours if you want it. Once you accept it, we are going to have to work on some stuff to learn how to be in a community together, to learn to respect and love each other, to respect each other's opinions and ideas. And it's not a free-for-all. Like someone asked if they could bring drinks into the sanctuary. Yeah. And someone was like, "There's not a lot of rules here." I'm like, "There are a few. We're not." Parents, we don't want kids throwing balls at the drop ceiling, it turns out. Okay, so just make a note of that, right, Tom? It's not a good way to take care of the building. So our behavior still matters. There was this time I was a pastor at a church. It was at the church prior to Central City that became City View. So it was at Central Avenue United Methodist Church in Athens, Ohio. And I was new on staff. I was their associate pastor, and I kept referring to the church as their church or your church. I was talking about the church that I was serving. And I didn't even realize I was saying this. I was just saying, I wasn't saying my church or our church, and I didn't realize I was doing it. But my mentor, my supervisor at the time, the senior pastor, Paul Reisler, noticed it and called me out. He said, hey, you're one of the pastors here. You should probably not be referring to it as their church or as someone else's church, as if I was working for a group of people I didn't belong to. Part of belonging here and anywhere is moving from a their church mentality to an our church mentality. This is your church, if you'll have us. Think about how membership works. Now, we actually have official membership. That's not what I'm talking about here in the church, and there's reasons for that. We can talk about it we'll talk about it later probably. But just membership works in other areas of life. I've been in the past a member of the local zoo. Anyone else? Great zoo here in Columbus. Our family loved the zoo membership. If you go to the zoo or to Zoo BZ Bay and you're not a member, you have to pay like $10 to park. But if you're a member, you just flash that member card, And it's feels pretty good, no, I belong here. And I feel that way about membership cards in general. The card says that I belong somewhere. It changes how I feel about the place. I walk around the place like I own it. When I go to Cosi and I got my membership on my app, or even just the membership at the local grocery store, which I recognize they're just tracking my data to sell it or whatever. But I still feel no, I'm a member here, Kroger. Lifetime Kroger person. I'm married into the Kroger family, so to speak. Alyssa's grandfather worked for Kroger in the HVAC department, which I guess is a department of Kroger. It's not in my notes. You don't need to know this, but it's just interesting. His entire life retired from Kroger, so we are Kroger people. And I got a card to prove it. And when, you go to these places, do you ask, do you have your card? And I'm like, yes, I do. And there's something powerful about having something that says, I belong here. So as part of our journey as a church, I've been thinking a lot about what it means to belong. How do we give this sense of belonging away? So to symbolize this, I created a membership card for you all. Yeah, absolutely. Very simple. Nice little card here. It says I belong. Yeah. Yeah. Can I get a couple people to help pass these out? I got a stack here. I got a stack here.
I think it means you get free coffee.
Yeah. It's free coffee. Some of this you might be like, I don't want these membership benefits, but I'm going to tell you what they are anyways. Number 1, membership benefit. And by membership, I mean we actually have official membership, blah, blah, blah. I'm talking about it informally. First one is free admission to gatherings and small groups for life. You don't have to pay to come. It's free. If someone charged you at the door, be sure to get a refund. You shouldn't have had to pay. Number 2, opportunities to serve where you're gifted. This is not about earning your place. We're going to talk about why serving is actually important. It might not be the first thing you do. It's not the secret to belonging. But in serving, that's where people build authentic relationships. It's where we find purpose and meaning and personal fulfillment. When we give back, it's really essential. Even though I'm on staff and I'm paid to be here, other people on staff, it's important for me to give back to this community and other communities. Serving is a part of membership. Belonging somewhere is giving of yourself. Similarly, regular opportunities to give generously. I had to throw that in. Also not a requirement, but I believe it's transformative. And I believe most people want to be generous. They just don't always know how or where. And as a church, we're committed to making a tangible difference in our city in the name of Jesus. So yes, you'll be given opportunities to be a part of that. Number 4, the chance to say, this is my church. You can say it right now. This is my church. You're welcome to. We are fine being associated with you. And some of you are like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah. But it could hurt your reputation, Joe. Yeah, I'm aware. Some of you might hurt my reputation more than others. Some of your reputation might be hurt by associating with me. But you can still say, this is my church. I'm willing to take a hit. I don't know if you are. Number 5. You never have to earn a place here. You don't have to reach a certain level of belief or behavior to belong. We do take our faith seriously. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll talk about what it means to believe, what it means to behave, and some of the practices that define us. But those conversations don't exclude you from belonging, no matter where you are on your journey. So these are for you, if you'll have them. And if you ever feel like your belonging is threatened here, I want to know. Sometimes it means we're going to have to change who we are. Oftentimes, it just means that we're going to have to agree to disagree, and that we're going to have to give space for each other to be at different places, to have different perspectives. And we learn to love and respect each other in the midst of those disagreements. But no matter what, you're always welcome to belong as long as you don't threaten someone else's belonging. When I think about the people who aren't here yet, my heart goes out to those who've been hurt by the church, disillusioned, or pushed away. And some people are still interested in Jesus or even grew up in church, but somehow along the way they lost their connection. Belonging doesn't mean you have to have all the answers. Belonging means we have a safe place to wrestle with the questions and the doubts that we have, whether our church becomes your spiritual home or simply a stop on your journey. I hope that it's a place of belonging while you're here. So let me ask you this, and I leave you with this question. Ben can come up and get ready for a closing song, but let me ask you this question. Is there someone in your life who needs this? Someone you wish would find a community of faith or discover Jesus for themselves or just need a place to no longer feel alone? And how can we as a church be that place for them? How can we be a church or a place where everyone has the chance to say, I belong? Let's pray. God, we come before you and we give you thanks. Your grace is, God, your grace just disrupts our lives and disrupts the systems and the tendencies and the ways in which we organize and build ourselves. Your grace pushes through all of the reasons in our head that would tell us that we don't belong somewhere. Your grace opens the doors for all of us to be loved. Your grace enables us to belong even when it costs us your reputation. For your grace is not concerned what other people think. Your grace is unlimited, unbinding. It's freely given. And we give you thanks for that. Help us to be a people of grace as well. In your name.